house hunting in Japan where I am and what has changed in the last 5 years. Let's do it.
Let's go.
So over the last couple of days I've been helping out a Patreon member find a house and land for her business venture here, and she's been a Patreon member for a couple of years now, and I've been mentoring her, and she's got a bit of a dose of reality of actually what it's like to find a place in Japan that suits all your needs. Originally she wanted to get a place further south in one of the more southern prefectures, and that's where she's spent the bulk of her time of her search over the last 18 months or so. And initially she was one of those website browser people who sort of see a house on a website and it's cheap and they want to buy it, and I've been teaching her that's not the way to do it. And she actually spent the last 2 weeks here in Japan, and she went to the area that she had her heart set on, and she spent a week there, and she's totally ruled the place out. So this is what happens with foreigners. They find a place on the internet and it's so cheap and looks so good and they just buy it, and then 6 months later they just abandon it. And some people actually start up channels about the house that they bought, and they go missing after a year or so because they don't live there anymore. And this might have happened to her if it wasn't for sort of me putting her in the right direction. So I've saved her a bit of a problem of probably buying a house where she had her heart set on, and it's totally ruled out. And she's taken a whole 180, and now she's come up to Nagano. So I've spent the last couple of days driving around the countryside looking for a property that might suit her needs, and we talked to a couple of guys at the council in the area that she has her heart set on. And these areas I actually know, and I've actually been to these city hall councils, and these are the areas that I recommended to her, and we've had a fruitful couple of days. So what I've noticed, because the areas where she's searching now, they've gone up in price a lot. In 2019 a property might have been $20,000 and these properties are now $60,000, and this is due to the influx of foreigners buying in the snow areas. And I did some videos on this before, and rich foreigners going up to the snow areas, they're buying up all the real estate there, and what's happening is the surrounding areas, which are mainly farming communities, and this is where she wants to live, because she wants to start up a farming enterprise. The spillover of the people who can no longer afford to live in the what are now sort of high-end tourist areas, they're buying in these farm villages, and it's sent the prices skyrocketing. So they've gone up 300% in 5 years. And this is what I've explained many times on my channel, is people buying up places where normal people live who are earning the local wages can no longer afford to live there anymore. So I had a couple of comments that were totally ignorant, and a couple actually live in these areas, and they said this has been great for their area. So the way it works is, if you work in these tourist areas as a normal worker, your wages haven't risen at all. So you're still earning your $8 US an hour, but your cost of living has tripled. So if you wanted to buy a house in the area where you're working, which was affordable 5 years ago, you can't anymore. So it's like earning $20 an hour but living in the middle of New York City. The wages for a standard worker just prices people out. So if you were a local, you can no longer be a local anymore. And I've noticed the quality of properties that are available after looking at the websites, and my wife was speaking to some people at the city halls there. Properties are getting less in these areas that are surrounding these areas where all the foreign buyers have bought up. And you often hear people saying that well, Japan's going to wither on the vine and things like this. It's just because they've never been to Japan. They don't know what they're talking about. They've just read some article from somebody that's never been here as well, or they've just repeated what they've heard in the comments somewhere, and it's just not true. Some areas in Japan are absolutely booming, and people are whinging about it, and people that are late to move. I've been advocating coming to Japan and farming for over 3 years now on my channel, and I don't think I've had anyone come and do it, but now I've got 2 or 3 that I'm mentoring now that want to sort of do what I sort of do, but the prices are just changing so quickly in these areas because they want to be 30 minutes from a city like where I am now in Nagano, because they have kids, they have other things. It's nice to be close to a city, isn't it? So these areas are just going ahead. As I said before in my video, it's very hard to find a house where I live. Sometimes you get the odd one coming on now and again, but it's not like before. As soon as they hit the market, they're getting bought up. Okay, so for everything I say, I always have receipts for. So here's a piece 4 weeks ago, NHK World Japan News.
Is here to tell us what's going on. So Yuko-san, first off, could you give us some of the details?
Sure. To put it simply, Japan's property market is booming. That's thanks to investors from inside and outside Japan. Now, according to the Land Ministry, as of July 1st, the average land price was up 1.4%
Property prices are climbing beyond the cities. Can you give us an example?
Yeah, some of the biggest gains we saw was in the popular resort areas. Now, one of them is Miyakojima, a summer resort island in Okinawa, southern Japan. Housing prices there shot up more than 25%. Demand seems to be driven by people resettling there or buying vacation homes. Another place is Hakuba, Nagano Prefecture in central Japan. It's a ski resort that hosted some of the events in the 1998 Winter Olympics.
So this is the mountains exactly opposite my place, and I'll show you where that is now. Just walk outside. So this is the area straight ahead, up in the mountains. So all up through there, locals are living and working in the resorts and things like this, and they're no longer able to afford to live there due to the difference in wages and property prices. So the surrounding areas, just on the other side and in between those mountains, they're traditional farming areas, and they've got upward price pressures due to the people having to leave and moving there, which makes it more difficult for people to get into farming. And also you've got the refugees from Turkey who've had enough of the cities, and they're moving up here too. So there's tremendous upward price pressures that unless you're earning a decent income, you're not going to be able to afford to live there. So people will have to eventually maybe move into small apartments in the city and commute to work. And what's going to happen if the wages don't keep up? They won't be doing that either. So they'll have to be relying on backpacker labour and itinerant labour, people coming over on 1-year visas, things like that. So it's going to change the whole vibe of the area. In the future, it just won't look like Japan at all. it will look just like any other recreational area anywhere else in the world. So what used to be quite a very Japanesey sort of cultural trip for many foreigners up in the Japanese ski fields, you won't be able to tell the difference between that and anywhere else. So even for the foreigners that chosen to live there and whatever they liked about the area 5-10 years ago, that's no longer going to be there. So even for the people that advocate that it's such a great thing for their area, I bet you if they were to speak truthfully in 5-10 years time, I think they'd say that they were wrong.
Place to accommodate summer visitors as well. It's paid off nicely, and it now gets more visitors in summer than in winter.
We're surrounded by nature here. Dogs are allowed. I think it's great for people who own dogs.
So there's a lot of focus on the resort areas. So what about the big cities like Tokyo?
Yeah, well, land prices in the metropolitan.
So what's happened is people focus too much on the direct investment somewhere, but they don't focus on the secondary and tertiary effects. So as I said before, investment's gone into that place, but the people that are living there and working there can no longer afford to buy there, and they're going out to other areas that are traditional farming areas. So it makes it harder for people to get into farming and things like this. So a lot of people, they see certain little things and they think it's good. It's because they can't really see beyond their nose. So now they're just talking about the apartments in the major cities.
The downside is that the influx of foreign buyers is making it hard for domestic buyers.
It's too expensive. I know that I can't afford to buy a place.
It's just that wages aren't rising. If the price of everything goes up, I want wages to keep up.
So why is there so much interest from overseas?
Right, well, I talked to Ohigashi Yuto from real estate company.
So this is why I suggest that you don't listen to these sort of negative haters and doomers and things like this on the internet when it comes to Japan, that everything's going awry and the economy is going to fall over the next day and things like this. These people are chicken littles. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't live here, and they're probably watching clickbait sort of YouTube channels that get their cheap views. So this is not the situation on the ground, and I noticed this firsthand just trying to get a farming property for my Patreon member. Just the difference that it's made, the investment and things like this, even in the rural areas here. And nothing gets a lot of views than somebody putting out a video saying that the rural areas in Japan are dying and all this sort of thing. It's true only in certain areas. There are rural areas in every country that will never come back. There's old mining towns in Australia that nobody will live in again, but people aren't going to cry that these towns will never come back. Got many towns in America too, old coal mining towns, Appalachian towns, things like this. Those towns and villages most likely go away, but everywhere else is booming, isn't it? So people select one little news item and they like to extrapolate because their minds aren't really on the ball, and they only take in the news that they want to hear. But this is the actual situation here in Japan.
This year, Tokyo's real estate market saw the biggest money inflow of any major market globally. It beat out New York, London, and Shanghai. Higashi says many factors affect.
So the money's pouring into Japan. This always happens when currency goes down. People see value. People see value in land, farmland, investment in tourist areas, things like this. And some people see the stock market drop or currency drop, and they think that that's the end because they have a very basic understanding of how things work. But I can tell you firsthand, and so can my Patreon member, that prices have risen, especially for good land 30 minutes from a major city. That's where all the action is. People who've bought out in the middle of the boonies, out in the middle of nowhere, they've done their money. In my parasite foreign property parasites video, which I'll put a link in. This is what I was explaining to you of people buying up in working class areas because of the yield. So I'll just play this little bit.
Okay, can you explain what he means by positive yield spread?
Sure. For example, think of when you buy a property to rent out. You'll probably get a loan from a bank, and then you decide how much rent you will charge. Now, the difference between how much you have to pay for the loan and how much rent you get is the spread. And in Japan, this spread is seen as pretty wide. And that's because it's cheap to borrow money here. Interest rates are low compared to other countries. As you know, the US and Europe had to fight inflation by keeping...
So what's basically happened is the rentier class that's been all around the world, they've tapped out every single market in every major city, and Japan is the next one. So these people basically do nothing, just collect rents, buy up properties, create no wealth, create no products, and all they do is drive prices up. And that's what my parasite video was all about. And that's what's happening out in certain country areas, especially the ones with services close to the train stations and shopping and cities and things like this. And I said this over 3 years ago, when you buy a place out in the rural areas, what to look for. And I've got a 10-part series on how to buy a Kia that is holding up excellently as far as advice goes, and everything is panning out exactly the way I thought it would. So in the major cities, because it's so convenient and so easy to get to and from work and things like this, there's going to be more people going back to the office, whereas in the traditional cities like Australia, Canada and America, people tend to work in the city and live away from the city. But that's not so much the case in the major cities in Japan. So this guy here, he predicts that prices for office space is going to recover and go higher. So we'll see exactly what he says.
The office, so this is the opportunity in Japan compared to the other market.
So office space will be in demand next. I think it's really interesting to see if that is the case.
Yes, well, and Ohiga says in other parts of the world, many people are still working from home. But in Japan, the workers mainly do their jobs in the office. So it's worth watching if the global money catches on.
So it's a bit of a question, isn't it, about Japan? Is Japan behind or is Japan in front? So if office space goes through the roof price-wise, Japan is possibly beating the markets everywhere. So it's either 20 years behind or 20 years in front. Could be 20 years in front in certain areas and 20 years behind in many areas. But it's interesting, it's something to look at. And this is driven by conveniences and being able to get to work quickly and easily and safely. And this is all about transport links. And transport links is what living in rural Japan is all about as well. You need them if you want to have a higher quality of life. You don't want services to be taken away. You want services to be added into the areas that you buy, but still have the rural lifestyle. So these are the sort of things that I talk about a lot with my Patreon members that are looking to move to Japan. There's a lot more you've got to think about than just going on a website and saying, oh, I like that one, it's cheap, I'm going to buy it. But sadly, that's what so many foreigners do. So anyway, that's just a quick video on changes in the real estate market and a bit of an update. And as always, hope you like the video.
Let's go back home.